So, welcome back to my channel. Today I will explain the structure of Aries. So, you see this chart? I made this little chart to explain the domiciles, the structure itself, so you can always have it in mind. So, let's start. Aries has the exaltation of the Sun. Sun is a very funny planet, which is the planet of the ego, and Aries incarnates that to the excess, because exaltation is excess. You think forcing ideas onto others is stupid, but if there's one consistent desire in history of all humans, probably, is the one to see one's ideas being confirmed to an unanimity. So everybody believing what you believe, or even worse, everybody being basically your same race, your same culture, your same religion, and doing exactly what you do. So Aries relies on this belief. It's the first sign, and the Sun is the first planet. Mars is the first planet, sorry. And Aries, really, I've seen a lot of Arieses, for example, believe that humans don't descend from monkeys. They deny a lot of the whole human-animal thing. They feel like humans are superior to animals, and that's very important for them. Moving on. You know the Bible? So we have the story of Abel and Cain. And in this story, which is very important, we have the firstborn herder versus a farmer. The herder is the perfect archetypal archetype. It dominates over cattle. It has authority. It requires energy to be done. And usually, historically, herders are really strong militarily. Nomadic usually also. So they embody archetypal archetype perfectly. Versus farmer, which is more Saturnian, because Saturn also is the law of the cycle, agricultural cycles. Roman astrology is based on agriculture, and probably Babylonian too. All astrology is ancient astrology. So farmers, which is this more feminine, time-related energy, because farming requires time, and Aries, as I explain later, does not like time, at least aging. They really don't like that. So Abel wins, I mean, at the start, against Cain. And you can see that God will always favor the herders of cattle over the farmers. And this is not just in the Bible, in other religious texts too, because they incarnate the first, so they have a priority to win. Or rather, Abraham and Isaac. So Abraham sacrifices his son, his only son. Why? Because God promised him a descendancy that was more numerous than the stars. And it really was aging. And like, basically there's a whole process of delirium that it's paired with this aging. Because Saturn falls. I'll explain this later though. So, most important Aries fact. Aries isn't necessarily the fastest, although it can be pretty fast. The fastest usually goes to Gemini. Gemini is the fastest sign in the zodiac. Even paired with Taurian planets, Aries is gonna take its darn slow time, but like, it's still gonna want to be the first. Aries always wants to be the first. It wants to be to have the primate. The primacy, sorry. Age-wise, Aries is the child in the womb. And even more than sexual intercourse itself, Aries Mars specifically serves the role of making the kid break out of the womb and be born, so entering into action, Sun, vitality, life, Mars, action, entering what was the first thing to do, being born. So that's something that Aries does, which will then obviously be reversed with sexual intercourse to recover the womb, but that's another story for Libra. Aries has a lot of significations, but like the physical ones are specifically the phallus, the skull, and the muscles of the arms, which I should know how they're called, but I don't remember. So, the phallus skull serves exactly the same purpose as a ramming force to ostentate vitality. So, in what sense? In the sense that energy, like literal energy, must be expressed in reality. And the skull also rules, like Aries also rules probably the hippocampus, not so sure though, I'm not completely sure, but basically impulsive decisions you have to do in the moment to survive. And see, the vast majority of Arises don't even care that much about pure strength, as much as they care about expressing their vitality. So who they are. They care about expressing who they are more than they care about being strong. Which sounds confusing and weird, but it does make sense because the Sun is exalted. Mars is just the first domicile. The Sun is stronger than Mars. In Aries, at least. In Capricorn, does not work like that. The difference between Aries and Leo is that Aries doesn't say I am the best. Aries says I am me. And sometimes also says fuck everybody else. Like literally, I don't care about anyone else. I am the only important thing in the world. But that's like to the extreme. Also, everybody has Aries. Just check your Aries placements, house, and when like transits or other people hit the house, you get that aspect. So I don't know. Everybody, there's a Neptune Aries transit now. You will embody that too in your specific way, denominated by the house. I will make a video about Aries in the house in the future. Aries does this thing of also embodying humanity and just being in, like, existing as a whole. So, for example, when somebody suffers some problem, like you don't suffer for some problem, you have a problem. Who first though isn't, sometimes without even thinking actually, saying me too, or I had it worse, or like I did bad, like I slept like shit last night, and like other people being like, oh, actually, I slept amazing. Like, does that, like, that helps the other person alleviate the other person sleeping bad, which really doesn't. But we must always talk about ourselves. That's fundamental. For no real reason. Like, logically at least. There's an egoic reason to it. So Aries is the individual, which has to deal with the world. Ego is not just absolute. Of course, we have people who always feel important. They always feel good. But most of the times, ego does this thing that I call localization, where it attaches to one specific thing. So, like, I don't know, you do sport. So that's your ego. I am the best in this sport and treasure everything else, for example. Or like, I am the best, I don't know, fixing car issues, or I am the best whatever, really doesn't really matter that much, but yeah, you got the idea. But Saturn falls in Aries. And there's not just one human in the wall of reality. We have many individuals. And we have to get along, right? But why the hell the individual will renounce his self-priority to come to pax with the other? Because the ego can proclaim monopoly of the other. In a relationship, you can say, I am the only one that can be with you, and the other one will probably say the same. That's what marriage is. So it's monopoly over the other. So it's always about me. Or like the ego. Yeah, exactly. It's not a bad thing, the ego. It's very necessary to exist and to feel good. You just don't feel good if you don't feel important ever because you have no self or no sense of self-importance. Like you have a lot of Libra placement. You always want to dump what you did. It's bad. So like that's a balance, of course. But Aries is the first sign. And it's also the sign which has probably all the, without probably, it has all the sexual significations necessary for life. So we have Mars to self-defense and action. So Mars, of course, you can defend from predators and stuff. Epsilon, which is very important, although it's in transit, so it's recovered, and it has the specific function of identification with action and with itself. So Aries identifies with itself or with its actions or with its desire. So it identifies with Mars, it's Pluto, or literally the Sun. That depends on the individual, of course, on the individual chart. But it works as the genetic code, cultural code that is considered the best and everybody else is inferior, which could obviously lead to racism and stuff, for example, but this thing gets really complicated. For example, during the American Civil War, there's Neptune in Aries, which idealizes conflict. And what it does, it means that the south of the United States, which is probably ruled by Aries too, Ireland is ruled by Aries too, and a lot of descendants come from there. I don't know if Scotland is too, probably. Celtics tend to be very Arietical. Enforces a stronger, tries to recover a lot of the slavery cult. It loses a war against the North, and then it reinvents itself under the KKK. This would probably be very long and worth a video out of itself. So Neptune in Aries now and in the 80s. I probably do that. Tell me if you're interested in that. So the cult of the self reinvents itself. I mean, always it recovers itself, which sounds confusing because they just lost a war and slaves got freed, but they had to reinvent their racism, basically. So it's not more about slavery, it's about segregation. And the ego evolves like this, in that specific aspect. So, going forward, we have also the Sun, which gives vitality to Aries, which paired with Epsilon, it creates the need to make more, which is the basis of reproduction, is to make more of yourself, basically. Which sounds very, very simple, but this thing is actually, this thing though is actually stronger in Leo. Like Leo is the specific sign designed to do that. But we'll get to that in another video. Ends with Pluto, which is the power that Aries obtains by all this action, but also it works as the seed to impregnate the earth. For example, you have heavy rain in March and April, which will make beautiful flowers grow during Taurus season like 1-2 months later. So yeah, it does that. fertilizing Venus. But Aries, honestly, is the most submissive sign of any of the zodiac. Why is that? Because we have the fall of Saturn and we have Pluto. So, the thing is that Mars is very precarious. Mars cannot preserve its energy, its action, eternally. Eventually, energy, momentum, exhausts. And then Aries just does not just become nothingness. So what happens is that Mars are also like, you see the thing, it's an arrow, so it also shows like the direction of the action. Action implies taking a direction, which is very important for the Aries. But you see, physical strength does not last for long. Unless we're talking about Capricorn, but that's another thing. Pluto is desire. Imagine you are taking like the explosive process to make gunpowder into making gunpowder. So you can condensate fire into a powder or a reduced, very small energy there. It's always ready to explode when you need it. That's something that Aries does by existing. So, Pluto is desire. So it's what you want. But the thing about wanting stuff is that you never really want it, because if you get it, you stop wanting it. So Pluto in Aries works as a fit. Aries is probably the sign which I've seen with the most consistent addiction problems. Why? Because Aries tries a lot of random stuff, and in the process of trying random stuff, you get addicted to stuff. It's not always bad. For example, if you have a weak liver, you have a bad Virgo placement, probably being addicted to alcohol is really terrible for you, but most of the time it's not that bad. But that's not the point. So, desire works like those pizzas, those little treats the Aries gets, work as a reduction of impulsivity. So Mars will say, I need to do stuff continuously. I need to act. But Pluto says, let's start desiring this thing, and like maybe we sort of go towards it, but not too much, because we don't want desire to end. So like Aries' addictions range from weed, beer, of course, Ireland, loud engines, sports. They're not necessarily always bad. For example, sport is healthy. Beer is very interesting because it's always been considered the most masculine thing to drink, which to me makes little sense because it does not have very strong alcohol kick, but it has the burping effect, which works as the Pluto release of like the explosion, no? So that's probably the reason, I guess. I still don't consider beer very masculine, but that's me. A lot of Aries do smoke a lot. I still don't exactly understand. Maybe it's like the part of the fire that just gets to them as like a symbology. So it condenses energy, Pluto. It does this thing. So they get their fits. They don't need to act towards random things as much. So they can like semi-focus on something without really getting it, which means they're more safe. But I told you submission. Why submission? They submit because if you share the same desires, they will probably submit to you because they really want to go towards the desire. Why you get military in Aries. Military structure, which in Aries is the frontline infantry, which of course, like, I don't know, ancient times, if you join, I don't know, Alexander the Great's armies, you'll be promised glory and riches if you win the siege. With like siege engines are like obviously the ram, sieging cities, the cities Libra, feminine, the other. Yes, exactly. But going back onto wanting to be the first. Aries really wants to be the first, so much that in doing that, it forges very irrational things, which are very fun to say, but they don't really make any sense. Like, I don't know, may the best win. But if it's the best, it's already gonna win by virtue of being the best, right? So, yeah. So Aries does this loop because ego, the sun loops on itself. So it does this ego loop, which is really funny to see. It's not bad. Because sun is always obviously very necessary for vitality. There are significations. They are sports. The more martial, the better. I don't know, lifting weights, for example, or any type of really martial art. And martial art is very interesting because it implies Libra and like sort of like not going irrationally against the other, but like sort of like semi-submitting, using rationality to predict the other moves and sort of do a dance to avoid. So like you dodge the attacks, but you don't really, you only attack when they're weak. There's another story. Sports are obviously loved religiously. I don't know if you've played football, both the American and the European, they call soccer, please, it sounds so bad. Is loved religiously, and anybody who is very good at it is seen like as some sort of like great champion of all time. And like they usually always talk about that if they're very obsessed with it. It's not necessarily bad, I mean, that depends if you like it or not. Cars is very interesting because the loud engine thing, the whole like driving. So I don't know, Aries is very masculine, no? There's this saying that woman can drive, and it's justified because of driving requiring good observations of the signs, which is done by Epsilon, which Libra does exiled via transparence, and therefore Libra placements do tend to struggle or literally ignore signs. But this isn't true. I mean, this could be astrologically true to a Libra extent, but I've seen Libra women, they drive stupendously. They like shout, like being angry at the other slow driver is like most of what driving is. For Aries, probably works like this. It's really funny to me. Like I have a Libra Mars, so I hate signs in the streets. They really just, there are just too many. I just don't see it. It's just too slow for my vision to pick them up. And yeah, exactly. Any type of shtick weapon, for the more martial ones like maces, swords, poles, spears, which are martial, or the more plutonic ones, so the more explosive guns, artillery, etc. They're very associated with Aries. Even tools, actually. Even tools, because most tools are like sticks with like some sort of thing. So like it's a strong association with Aries too. Like I don't know, flags. Flags are high poles. Poles you put when you conquer like a city to prove that you conquered it. So like you ram the city, you break it down, you enter the city, you reach the tower, you put the pole, and then the city is yours. It's like a marriage. Yeah. Aries does not like to age. They absolutely detest aging. The sun is exalted, so life itself is exalted, and aging leads to death. So Saturn collapses, falls. Hence, they age really poorly, usually, not always. If they have a strong Saturn recovery in some other like signs, I don't know, you're an Aries with like Mars in Capricorn with like a Saturn that's also like in Capricorn, probably gonna be this thing's not gonna apply. But you can notice that every monotheistic religion promises eternal life, which is the eternal exaltation of the sun, which is eternally being me. So yes, also even atheist Aries do believe in some sort of monotheism of sorts. It's very interesting to observe. Epsilon, which is in transparence, is recovered, and Epsilon is eternal time, so Aries do not want to lose time. Absolutely do not make an Aries wait, it's bad. And of course, Libra has Saturn exalted, so it's indecisive, it takes a lot of time, it's very slow. And the saying, hence the saying, that women take too much time to decide on things, but that depends mostly on the zodiac. Because Saturn does really slow things down, and Aries does not want to lose time. But Aries is not just, it sounds bad, say it like this, but it has a specific mission, which is very important, probably the most important, which is initiation of things. I call this often the predetermination sign because its irresponsible actions make reality emerge and change. So if Adam eats the apple and blames Eve, he gets kicked out, then begs God to lead its descendants onto victory, which is also like related to Aries' submission to the father in order to be the father yourself in the future. Aries creates, in this way, Aries creates choice, the illusion of choice, rather. I mean, if you believe in free will, it's just choice, but yeah, exactly. So sin is excessive identification, and basically via Pluto, you go for that desire. That desire turns out to be bad, so you get like the apple itself is Saturn, which is the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, and Saturn does the pondering of the dualistic good and bad. Hence in Libra is justice. And you eat that, you're aware that the other exists, so this apple is like the other, and you get kicked out, and now you have to deal with reality. Because before, like you can imagine Adam as a kid, he learns this thing existing, and then he gets kicked out. Of what? Of its egopathy. So he'll starts the whole processing of becoming all the other signs, which I will talk, of course, in the next videos. But yeah, it's like Aries, though they really do extensively love freedom. They do not like to be told what to do. So usually the thing about Aries, sometimes their ego gets projected onto others. So their mission of being oneself becomes making everybody be oneself, which is of course really good, and that's really lovely, honestly. So they will bring you on a path of discovering yourself, how to be yourself more, being less apologetic. So it does that too. So it's not like depends on the houses also. Like probably if you have a strong Aquarius sector as a Aries, you will be brought into humanitarian teams, and this whole theme of making others be themselves can be really strong for you. Because of course you don't have the Aries Sun, Aries Mars, Aries Mercury, Aries Saturn, like the thing doesn't exist. We all have different placements. So there's a limit of the concentration a sign can be. So you probably buy, as an Aries, if you're an Aries, you probably buy some of those significations. Not all of them. This is just the sign of Aries in general. Hopefully this video was interesting. And peace out.